Yes, but let's start with Tottenham Hotspur, as once again they dominate a lot of the sports back pages. And those quotes from Dominic Solanke, very telling. Back page of the Mirror, Dom4 is the headline. Solanke saying, show fight or we're doomed to drop. He's basically warned his players, his teammates, Jack, that they have to fight. They're in a precarious situation. And I think it's dawning on a lot of them that they are really in the fight of their lives. He says us players on the pitch need to take responsibility after that 3-1 loss to Palace. Do you think they'll step up now?
I mean, you hoped it would have dawned on them that they're in some serious trouble. I think not only do they need to show some fight, a bit of competence wouldn't go amiss either. They've been so worryingly bad. They've got a real... Everyone sort of feels that in this day and age, a club of that size, stature, the income and the revenue that they generate, especially with their stadium, it's almost impossible for them to go down. But they've just been complacently falling towards it for week on week. I keep sort of saying to people, I think they will stay up, and I'm starting to worry that they're going to make me look very stupid indeed in the next couple of weeks. I mean, watching last night, it was just jaw-dropping in terms of how they fell away. Of course, you lose a man and it gets a lot harder from there, and they didn't concede after half-time. But that game, and even at Fulham where they offered almost nothing, there's been absolutely nothing there. And I think what they do need is some sensible decision-making. Tudor is erratic in terms of his comments, his team selections. I remember reading a column from Harry Redknapp, obviously someone that a lot of Tottenham fans have maybe, a bit cheeky, but talked up whether he could have been an option when Thomas Frank was sacked. But he wrote a column in The Sun saying that what you've got to do is go in there and put your arm around players because they'll be so shattered and the confidence will have completely gone that you need to try and pick that back up again. And Tudor seems to have just gone the complete other way, turned his guns on them, and it's left them in even more disarray. I think you look ahead at the games they've got coming. Liverpool, of course, you never really know what you're going to get from them this season, but they look far more confident and competent in the last few weeks, aside from that Wolves game where I don't think many people saw that coming. And then you go ahead to that Forest game, which is enormous, and you wonder whether they're in a mindset and a mentality at the moment to be able to cope with that sort of game and the pressure that will bring, being up against one of their two rivals for relegation. They've already lost to West Ham at home in the past couple of months. That was one of the final nails in the coffin for Thomas Frank. And you do think you need these figures like Dominic Solanke and maybe Richarlison to be the ones leading it. They would have had at Bournemouth and Everton experiences of having to try and stay up, to fight to stay up in the Premier League at times. And you look across the rest of the squad and it's just not a group that's built for this sort of fight, that will have been under this sort of pressure before and will know how to react and give everything. And if you've not got a manager that's lifting you up and telling us you can do this, you need those that have been around in this situation before to take the lead and do that. So I think it's encouraging to hear Solanke say it, but of course fans won't believe anything until they see some sort of response. And although it's not the priority, Atletico Madrid is where they want to see it.
Yeah, looking at the back page of the Star, Domshell is the headline. Solanke saying, show some fight or we're doomed. How much of this is on the players, do you think, Mark? Of course, we know that Tudor's come in as a firefighter to get them out of a horrid situation. But once the players cross the white line, it's on them, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's on the players because they're the ones that have been getting the results and they've been getting terrible results. They haven't won a Premier League game in 2026, so that shows you how badly they've been performing. But, it's a bit easy to put it on the players, and even it's easy to put it on Thomas Frank and Igor Tudor. You have to ask the question, when they sacked Thomas Frank, who at Tottenham thought it was a good idea to hire a coach who had no Premier League experience, who had, as was a player as a coach, whose reputation in Italy was as a firefighter? He didn't stay long in his jobs. He had no real credentials to take the Tottenham job. So the Tottenham board who made that decision were really playing Russian roulette with the club's future by doing this. They were probably being a bit too clever, thinking, we'll be all right, we're Tottenham, we've got a squad of players. But they haven't got a squad of players. I mean, I was looking around, you look at the Forest team and the West Ham team. Tottenham haven't got a Jarrett Bowen. They haven't got a Morgan Gibbs-White. Who's the Tottenham player that can get them out of a hole in the game and turn a game? They haven't got anybody. What happens at Tottenham is their players let them down. Romero in one game, Mickey van der Ven in another game. A lot of players go missing. And I think you look at those games, Jack's mentioned those games, Liverpool away, where they never seem to win at Anfield. Forest at home. Will Forest play Fulham at home prior to the game against Tottenham? So you'd expect that Tottenham will probably be below Forest by that time, the time that game comes around. They've got to go to Aston Villa, Tottenham. They've got to go to Chelsea. They've got to go to Wolves, who, although they're struggling right now, Wolves are playing well at home. So I find it really hard to find games that Tottenham can win. They probably need to win 4 games to be certain of staying up. 4 wins out of 9 games. They haven't won since December. So, yes, it's Tottenham, one of the biggest clubs in England. Tottenham got a great stadium, great training ground, blah, blah, blah. We say it all the time. But their derby could be against Stevenage next year in the Championship, because that's how it's looking at the moment. Spurs could get relegated, and Stevenage, who were non-league not so long ago, could be coming up. So that is the bleak future that Tottenham face, and I don't see a way out of it for them. I really don't.
Yeah, Jack, as Mark has mentioned, Tudor was brought in with no Premier League experience. Back page of the Times saying that Spurs set to give Tudor one more chance to avoid sack. So basically, they'll stick with him for this upcoming Champions League game on Tuesday against Atletico Madrid. But his future beyond that is uncertain. It feels almost preposterous to say it, but after 4 games, he could be sacked.
I mean, it does, but also you look at the games and he's already had, I think Tom's piece there says that he's already had a quarter of the games he was given, and they've got a lot worse, and they've got absolutely nothing out of them. You can almost write off Arsenal, of course, because although it's a derby and it's a huge game for Tottenham, I think nobody really expected them to get something out of that. But the way they've performed against Fulham and Crystal Palace is horrendous. And I think Mark hit a really good point there in terms of being a bit too clever in where they turn to get someone. It sort of feels like a deal that maybe Fabio Paratici, the old director or technical director of football, head of recruitment, whatever his role was, it changed quite a lot. It feels like they just sort of found a contract and an option that he might have left in a drawer somewhere and went, okay, that's quite good. We'll go and get this chap. That's all sorted. So you wonder where they look next if they are going to make a change. But the way it's going and the performances we're seeing, he's obviously getting nothing out of the players. He doesn't know what his best team is, and fair enough, why would he? He's got a load of injuries and he doesn't know this squad. The changes and selections he's making are very bizarre. I think it seems ridiculous, but we've seen across this entire season, Forest are on to their 4th manager. Managers have come in, people that were supposed to be there for a long time. Enzo Maresca had won trophies, and Liam Rosenior's come in at Chelsea, and there was even a touch of pressure on him at times when he was winning games. It's been an incredible season for managerial churn, and I don't think if things don't pick up across the next game, and it's not a case of can we see small signs of progress, that's not what Tudor's there for. They need to see big leaps in progress, points that they can put on the board and move away from a situation they would have never, ever seen themselves in. So if it doesn't pick up very, very quickly, I think they'll have to make a change.
Yeah, and whilst the Tottenham hierarchy are worried about the results and the performances, they'll also be worried about the financial implications of a team like Spurs, one of the 6th richest clubs in the Premier League, playing in the Championship next season. They'll lose out on TV money, on sponsorship deals, on gate receipts, revenue, everything. Some figures quoting as high as more than £200 million they'll lose out on by being relegated, Mark. In the Telegraph, they go one step further in saying that crisis hit Tottenham, weighing up actually appointing a second manager in a month. Not that they'll give Tudor more time, they're actually weighing up another manager right now. So you can understand why this has reached crunch point. And yes, it might be preposterous to sack a manager after 4 games, but when that amount of money is involved, it's necessary, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, relegation would be catastrophic for Tottenham. There's no escaping that. I mean, they are a well-run club financially, and you'd think that they are, cushioned against the potential of relegation, but it would not be something they've ever contemplated. And we know they've got relegation clauses in the contracts of the players, who most will probably leave anyway. Not that they're good enough, but most will probably leave because they want to get away. That Spurs wouldn't be able to pay the wages, even if they had a 50% reduction. So the sense of chaos that would envelop Tottenham if they were relegated just would be, I don't know, be unprecedented, because you're looking at a squad of players that would go, the fans would be in absolute revolt, the board would, I'd imagine the CEO would have to go, because if you're CEO at Tottenham, you take the club down, you can't stay on. So it's not just what happens on the pitch, it's what happens off the pitch, and it's what happens to the reputation of the club. Would they, and we're talking about would they come back up, they haven't even gone down yet, but would they come back up? Because they haven't got a squad of players that you could rely on in the Premier League. So could you rely on those players that we all talk about? Tottenham have no fight, this Spursy thing. How would that go down in an away game at Millwall or at Stoke? We're talking about tough encounters that Tottenham aren't built to cope with. So they just got to pray they don't go down, because the prospects of coming straight back up who knows? It's going to be very, very difficult and very bleak for Tottenham.
Yeah, it is. We'll wait to